Hello everyone and welcome once again to my YouTube channel. I'm Gwendolyn Halley, I'm a medical microbiologist, and today we are going to be talking about people living with albinism and touching on little areas particularly in Cameroon, and going forward to talk to you about my project that I have to empower the albino community. Now before I start, I would like to say many albinos or people living with albinism find it offensive when someone who is melanated or who has melanin refer to them as albinos. Till today, I am still training my tongue how to call someone living with albinism, not an albino. I'm still trying to erase the word albino from my mouth because many of the people living with albinism that I have spoken to find it very offensive. And in many countries, particularly in Africa, they have local names. For example, in Cameroon, they are referred to Ngengeru. In other countries, they have different names, and they find it really offensive. I would like to say this: nobody chooses to be born with albinism. It's a genetic condition, mutation in genes, that makes a person's body not to produce melanin, which is the dark pigment which you find in the hair, in the eyes, and in the skin. Nobody chooses the family they want to be born into. Nobody chooses the hair they want to have, the skin they want to have, the eye color they want to have. Nobody chooses if they want to have bigger bones or smaller bones. You know, this is just the way the Creator, God, created us. And depending on the genes, and these genes are passed on from one generation to another, one person to another. And sometimes you'll find a woman who is living with albinism and she crosses with a man who doesn't have albinism, he's not living with albinism, and none of their children carry the gene. But subsequently, their grandchildren may carry the gene. So this is something that I want to say, that this gene can become recessive. If you've done biology and you've done the crossing, you find out that the gene can become recessive. Now, in Cameroon, people living with albinism are actually rejected. They are actually banished into villages. They call them what they call Obanje, they call them witches, they call them outcasts, they call them vagabonds, and they cast them out of a village. If you are in a village that is very primitive, in Africa as a whole, and in Cameroon in particular, you will be sent out, your parents will disown you, you become an orphan, and you begin to live in the bush. Another horrible thing that happens to people living with albinism in Cameroon is they are used for money rituals. That a lot of people who want to go into getting money, rich or famous through fetish, dark powers, witchcraft, they use people living with albinism. And that is why you will find it very difficult for someone living with albinism to go to the salon to shave his hair or to go to the salon to plait their hair. Either they are scared that somebody will pick up their hair, and take it to a demonic altar or use them for rituals. In Cameroon, people living with albinism are not employed because a lot of employees or people who own companies believe that they can't see properly, they can't see the computer properly, they can't read properly, they are ineffective, they're inefficient. And not only that, the sun affects them so badly. In Cameroon, if you are living with albinism, it will be very difficult to date, to have a relationship. I remember a friend of mine, Nick, who is present now in Canada, who is somebody who was born with albinism, who tell me how he actually had his cousin eavesdrop on a girl's conversation, his girlfriend's conversation, and the girlfriend was telling her friend that she's just with Nick just because she wanted to eat his money, and that she's never going to marry an albino or someone living with albinism. So these are the kind of things. And in Cameroon, if you're a woman, females living with albinism easily get raped or exploited. It's very difficult for a woman who's living with albinism to genuinely marry somebody they love, because most of the time, the people who come towards them is just to taste how they look like. Men have a primitive thinking that a woman living with albinism tastes differently. That means the sensation is different during intercourse than with a woman who is dark-skinned like me. I don't know where that primitive thinking is. On the other hand, you have other women who are not living with albinism who think that men living with albinism do not know how it's like to pleasure a woman. And another thing that people living with albinism go through is that there is this misconception that they smell a lot, that they have a repulsive smell. I don't know why this misconception exists. Maybe it's because people who bleach their skin or whiten their skin particularly emit that fishy, pungent odor, especially when it is sunny or when it is humid. Now, as I go on, if I could remember any other misconceptions or the way people living with albinism are treated, I will mention it. But one thing that really drew my attention with people living with albinism and gave me interest and drew my company particularly, it's because nobody chooses how they want to be born. Nobody decides they want to be born with a genetic mutation. The sun is their greatest enemy. Now, many mothers cannot pick their children from school. Many children growing up with albinism, or people who have grown up with albinism in their childhood, never lived a regular life, never knew what it's like to go to the beach side, to go to the playground, to go to a creche, or where you can just play with others or play outdoors, because the sun is the greatest problem. When you start having sunburns, it will increase, or blisters. You'll start having all forms of opening in the skin. And once a person living with albinism has an opening on the skin, that is catastrophic. The person has a 98% chance of developing cancer. Now, this is the point where people living with albinism would actually laugh at and ridicule people who are dark skinned, who are bleaching their skin, on how stupid they are. Like somebody living with albinism would be saying that I'm trying to look for a way to protect my skin for me from getting cancer, and you who is dark skinned, you're peeling off your melanin, you're suppressing your melanin because you want to be lighter skinned. Now, that is the whole world is sick today. And I came up with a project for people living with albinism in Cameroon. And I'll give you details in a bit. Well, I'll tell you a bit about my company. In my company, Halenda Sal, it used to be Health and Medical Empire before, but I upgraded it to Halenda Sal. So I do manufacturing and distribution of skincare and hair care products. So in that brand, or in my brand of skincare, I have this product, Shade. And Shade is actually a sun protection oil, and it's made out of avocado oil, natural vegetable oil, and with 2 active ingredients, mineral active sun protection active ingredient, the mineral ones, and that I put in here, and fragrance and a lot more. And when I started my company, we wanted to do corporate social responsibility, so we handed this out to a lot of albinos. I think if you go on my Facebook page or my page for my Keramaniac on Facebook, you will see that I did a call-in, my company, as part of corporate social responsibility. We gave out over 100 samples of this for free. We just posted it on Facebook, and you will not imagine, we did the transportation to people who were living out of Douala. And what I found out is that most of the people living in albinism who collect the products, they appreciated it, they wanted more of it, but because it was a corporate social responsibility, I could not do it long term. And also, they couldn't believe that I was just giving them for nothing. So I took upon myself to partner now with an association, or like an NGO in Cameroon, and particularly those living with albinism. I'll show you a video in a bit on how it was when I visited my first albino association, an association made up of people living with albinism. I got to visit them, I got to share my project with them, and we got to actually share a meal with them. So take a look at it and tell me what you think. this, people living with albinism are beautiful people. And one of the things I admire about them is that they don't have the other kind of funny diseases that we with melanin. They are special people and they are very smart. I met you two were very smart, doing well at school, and I pitched my idea to them and they were very happy about it. But where the point we ended was at the funds. Getting funding to fund the project. And the project was to actually teach the people living with albinism how to produce their own sun protection oils and sell them in their community. It also create businesses for them and also teach them how to produce hair products, you know, and because their hair easily falls off and breaks off. So these are the things that I discussed with them, and we ended at the point where the funding, we couldn't get funding to fund the project. And I met another association and then we spoke about it. Unfortunately, that association was more interested in where I'm getting my funds from. And I was like, okay, I'm here to help you. I'm here to empower a community that has needs. This project is bigger than you and I. Why are you interested? I'm a company. So on finding out later, I was being told that a lot of people living with albinism are very, very conscious about people who want to come and partner with them or want to use them as brand ambassadors, because many of them use their images, pictures, or whatever, and when they get funding, they do not bring it back to empower the community of people living with albinism. So I'm calling upon everyone. I've actually spoken to another NGO. So before I did that, I actually went to the social affairs, the Department of Ministry of Social Affairs here in Cameroon, and I spoke to someone there, and the person advised me to start my own association, which I did. And I also got registered into the system here in the delegates in my in the region, in the neighborhood where I live, because those are the procedures. And I had to come back, and then the corona thing came up. So I actually dropped my my project in many companies. I don't want to call their names, but I didn't get a response from any of them. None of them get me a response. I followed up. Some of them told me that they don't have money, and I'm finding out it's because none of them have. They believe that they don't have anything to gain, and I'm like, this is even if you're a bank or even if you're whatever, you will have people living with albinism come to bank with you because you support them. And apart from that, it's just love. It's just giving back to the community. A lot of companies in Cameroon did not want to sponsor my project. I took it even to Chamber of Commerce. I dropped a copy there. I dropped a copy at some banks. I dropped it at some big companies, some foreign oil companies here in Cameroon, and none of them were interested in the project. So I'm calling on you now who is listening to me. I actually did contact somebody that I met in Nigeria when I went for a conference with the UN, and he linked me up with his cousin, and she has an association that is dealing with people living with albinism. And one of the things she was facing is getting funds as well. So if you're listening to me and you are interested in partnering, please don't forget, send me a message, check my information, send me an email, send me a WhatsApp, call me, because the people living with albinism in Cameroon, in Africa and the whole, don't have. I try to make the product very affordable because all the sun protection, sunblock or sunscreen oils or products in Cameroon are imported, and they range between 5,000 francs to 6,000 francs for about 250 milliliters. Now, how many meals, or 200 milliliters, how many meals would somebody living with albino, how much money are they going to put on their oil product, spend on their oil product or their body creams just to protect their skin? And bear in mind that the UV light in West Africa, particularly in Cameroon, is so high. And not only are UV rays produced during the day, ultraviolet rays are also produced at night, but although at a lower intensity. So I had to produce something that was very affordable and that everybody could get. And I need support and partnership for everyone who's listening. It may not necessarily be in Cameroon, but in another country. So when I partnered with this lady in Sierra Leone, she's still looking for funding. I even had to contact somebody in the UN, and none of them really are interested. The ones particularly in Africa are interested in this project. I I do pray that whoever is listening to me, God will touch your heart and you will actually reach out to help the community of people with living with albinism. I'd like to give you my story with an albino, somebody who's carrying the albino genes. I actually had a guy who was approaching me, and he actually had OA type 1. That is ocular albinism type 1, and it affected only his eyes. He was very light skinned, very low, but he had a little bit of greenish eyes, greenish blue eyes. So when I met him and he was asking me out, I was excited to go out with him, but I told him that you seem to have albino genes, and he refused that he had albino genes. And I was like, okay. I said, but how is it? And he showed me a picture of his sister, and his sister actually was so fair-skinned, so light-skinned. As time went on in the relationship and we started dating, one day when we went out, we were having dinner, he actually showed me a picture of his mom. And I told him, why were you refusing that your mom is someone living with albinism? And he didn't answer. And I'm like, I was right? And he just looked at me. And the thing is, I think his fear is that I was going to deny him, or I was going to refuse to date him because he was carrying the albino gene, the albinism gene, and he knows that how a lot of people feel about it now, because many people are not comfortable. But the truth about it is, I told him when he was talking, I told him, like, if you know the way I want albino babies, I love babies living with albinism. I mean, they are so cute, they are so nice. And this made me to think, when I was speaking with Nick, my friend who is now in Canada, who was telling me that even when it's winter time, he still has sunburns. And Nick was telling me about the problems he has with his skin and all that. And in my mind, I was like, wow, this is serious. He was telling me that I shouldn't blame the guy. Like, the guy probably felt that I was going to reject him. Or I was like, no, I just left him because he was lying a lot. He was not honest. He used to lie a lot. He was not honest about the job he did. He wasn't honest about where he has been. And if we have to go out, he wouldn't call me to tell me, oh, I'm running late. He easily forgets about commitment issues. Man, I couldn't deal with it. And that was the reason why we broke up. So that was it. So I hope that you have learned a lot about people living with albinism in Cameroon, the misconceptions the Cameroon community have about them, the way they are being treated, and which I find repulsive, especially now that there's war in Cameroon, in the Northwest and Southwest civil war. Many of people living with albinism are now all over. I actually was speaking to a lady who has an association in the Northwest and Southwest, in the Southwest, and she was telling me that she was an association actually, and she was telling me how she has to support getting, and most of the associations or people who fund the project or want to give into her association send mostly sunscreens, and she has to look for them and give them sunscreen. And I was telling her, my sunscreen is way cheaper. It's way cheaper, and I have a project that we can do. So all is getting funding. So it is very wrong for you and I to judge someone from their skin color, their hair color, their eye color. We judge people from the heart. Don't judge me for my skin, for my hair, for my eyes, from the way I look. Judge me for my heart. There are a lot of people who are dark skinned but have very bad, very, very, very repulsive characters, toxic characters. I've spoken to, during this project, while running this project, I've spoken to beautiful people. And I even met some people who are even afraid, of coming towards people who are melanated, who have melanin, because the stigma is so bad that you feel rejected. How do you expect this person to grow up normally? Imagine from childhood to adulthood. How do you expect them to get married? And many of them don't get married. In Cameroon is so bad. Please, let's change our conception. Let's say that many people will say, if they have a child living with albinism, they need to have a lot of money. They don't eat this, they don't eat that, they don't eat this. Just like me, we who have melanin, there's certain things I get allergic to. That's the same thing someone living with albinism will get allergic to. What a food that will not go, or a diet that will not go for one a person living with albinism will not go for the next person, would go for the next person living with albinism. That means someone who is living with a type of albinism can accept to eat certain foods, and another person living with albinism will not like that food or may like it. So it all depends. Yes, we all need to take care of their skin. Their only problem is their skin. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much. And tell me what you think about this topic. Tell me how the people living with albinism in your community are treated. Share this with me, oh God. Let us sensitize the population. Let us sensitize our primitive thinking that because we think we have melanin, we are better off than someone who doesn't have melanin, or who doesn't have melanin in the hair, in the eyes, and or the skin. I mean, it is so, so wrong. So, till next time, bye-bye.